Hey everybody, welcome to the Outlet Podcast channel here on YouTube. My name is Gazy. How are you guys doing today? I'm not doing too bad myself. I was able to get in some time as far as reading goes, and I continued the narrative life of Frederick Douglas, an American slave. And as always, when I read this book, it causes me to just like sit back, meditate, think about current events, what's going on with the various communities that are trying to deal with these issues that are sensitive issues that go back years and years before our fathers and our grandfathers. Like it causes me to like think about people individually rather than collectively, because I definitely hope that collectively some people don't live the way that they used to live. And I got some examples here I want to share with you. So remember, this is the in the beginning was the word book club, and what we do here in this book club, we always read. We have to constantly read. Make time as best as you can. Myself, not only was I not only am I reading this, but I'm reading some textbooks from a Bible club, a Bible institute that I'm attending. I've been recently kind of named a Sunday school teacher with my wife at another church. So now I have to be involved in different curriculum. So I have to read so much. And not only that, I'm trying to run a landscaping business. So life has been a little hectic, but it's been really fun, So remember, number one, you have to read. And number two, remember that there's no pressure. We're reading for comprehension, not to impress anybody, not to go on Facebook and say, oh look, I'm reading like all these books and stuff. It's like, no. You're reading to edify, to educate, to learn yourself. So like these days you can't trust teachers. Like you have to teach yourself. You have to be willing to go above and beyond, because in life not many people are going to like hand out the things you need. You might not be given the lemons to make lemonade, but hey, if there's some oranges, why don't you make some orange juice instead? Think about it. Boom. So one of the things I want to talk about in chapter 3, and I'll try to bring chapter 3 and chapter 4 together so that I make some more progress with these videos. What I learned in chapter 3, this might be considered a racial term. Please don't consider me, like, I'm not trying to say it for shock jock value, but it brings a lot of historical like influence or perspective. All right, there's a term, apparently it's called a tar baby. Like I did some research about the tar baby. Now in this book, Frederick Douglass, as a child, he grew up on he grew up on Captain Lloyd's farm. Now Captain Lloyd was the slave owner. He was very rich, unbelievably rich. Frederick Douglass made it at a point that whenever like his horses needed to be a certain way, because by the way a man's horses were, then so is the man. These days, if you're driving like a dirty Maserati, I'm sorry. Like, all right, it's a nice Maserati. You got a Maserati, but it's dirty. So back then, I guess you needed like clean clothes, clean horses, clean everything. So apparently, he had an orchard or a garden. This garden, as described by Frederick Douglass, grew apples from the north and oranges from the south. So just imagine it. This guy had a utopia-style garden, right behind his backyard. And so what would go on is that there were 4 slaves that were taken to work that garden, and there was a chief gardener. So sometimes some people would steal. Was it the slaves? Maybe. Was it the owners and stuff? Maybe. You can't really say that it wasn't for either case, because what we know about the slave owners and the taskmasters of this time, Frederick Douglass explained that they could not be held in conviction. If even if a taskmaster or a slave owner was wrong, they still acted like they were right and beat slaves brutally, even though the slaves were honest. Like Frederick is explaining how Captain Lloyd would be on his horse, and he'd go to tell one of the slaves in the field, "How is your owner treating you?" He had so many slaves that he didn't even know them, and that they didn't even know him. They didn't even see him. So if the slave were to respond truthfully and say, my master is, doesn't take care of me, he doesn't feed me, he doesn't give me clothes, then that slave would be sold and be separated from his family. Believe it, you guys, this is like tragic stuff. So in their honesty, they were punished, and in the dishonesty of the taskmasters and the slave owners, they were revered. Let me get to a weird point before get back into the Tar Baby discussion. The slaves were brainwashed in this way, thinking they were, not only were they paranoid, thinking that their taskmasters will all of a sudden like catch them in the middle of nowhere. Not that they were lazy, but if they were in a moment of weakness where they were tired, they were afraid for their lives. So they were lorded over like with this fear, this ambiance of foreboding that they didn't know what to do. Often, Frederick Douglass even shared that they were brainwashed in so much that they would be, when they would see other slaves of other masters, there would be a fight in between both groups of slaves about whose master was greater. What? That makes no sense. You're fighting about who is greater? Which man that is like lording over you and beating you and whipping you is greater? Well, what would happen was that the slaves would debate who was nicer, who was kinder, who was smarter. They did this because, what I gathered, it's kind of a sense of validity, what they would do. It's the same way, who do you, like if I were to ask you, who do you bank with? Oh, your bank sucks. My bank is the best. My bank, they take out $35 overdraft fees. They stink, but to argue you, I say that my bank is better. But both of them are really bad. You know what I'm saying? So this is what the slaves of that time did, kind of to validate their own worth, because they felt that maybe the greatness of their slave owners, of their masters, would be attributed to them. And it's never ever the case. Never think, you guys, never think that maybe your political party cares about you. They don't care about you. Your family should ideally care about you and love you. But to go outside of that spectrum, at work, they don't love you at work. If they do, they just want you to produce. The owners of the companies that you work in, they just want you to produce. That's it. They don't really care about your feelings, how you're doing. No. Okay, so what if I bring you coffee and breakfast, like twice a month or something? Employee appreciation, yeah. I'll bring you a cake so you can celebrate your birthday. All right, yeah. I don't care about you. I don't. I want you to make me money. That's the institution that we see today, but back then it was a bit more gruesome, So that's the mentality that these slaves had. Not only that, going back to the term tar baby. Now, the term tar baby came from the Song of the South. It was written by it was narrated by a fictional person called Uncle Ruckus, or Uncle Remus. I guess Uncle Remus, you could say, is as a type of Mark Twain. The real guy was another author, but the narrator in the tale, the Song of the South. Song of the South, it deals with a number of various stories, but it like mostly focuses on Brer Rabbit. Now, Brer Rabbit is a type of like an analogy of the African American people at that time as slaves. Now, there was Brer Fox and Brer Bear. Brer Fox and Brer Bear, you can actually attribute them as slave owners and taskmasters. So what would happen in this case, as far as the tar baby, they the fox made a got a bunch of tar and other stuff and clothes and created a type of bunny rabbit also. So Brer Rabbit saw this other rabbit, and I guess he was trying to talk to that other rabbit. But the more he tried to talk, the other rabbit wasn't talking. It was made of tar and hay. So Brer Rabbit got so upset, he started punching and kicking the tar baby, but he got stuck. So what happens was when all of his hands and feet were stuck, the Brer Fox came around and was like, "I got you." And then Brer Rabbit, in his wisdom, said, "Don't throw me to the thorn bush," knowing that if he was thrown in the thorn bush, that's where rabbits at that time were able to serpentine through the thorns and stuff, so they weren't necessarily hurt. So it's a giant story. The Song of the South is actually something that Disney put out, but Disney censored like crazy. And I wish Disney didn't, because I think on some stances you just need to talk and be open. We're talking about our history as American citizens. We need to learn about the dark side of our country, as well as the landing on the moon. If you believe in the landing on the moon, I like to believe in the landing, that they landed on the moon, but you need to realize the dark stuff happened and the light stuff happened. The evil happened, Civil War happened, but from the Civil War we now have fellowship in between all various races and cultures. So yeah, so that's what happened in the Tar Baby as far as the Song of the South. Now, according to the book, some of the slaves, remember Captain Lloyd's like orchard vineyard, some of the slaves would sneak fruit. They would eat some of the fruit. And they were whipped if they were caught by the chief gardener. So what the gardener did was that he put tar on the fences, so that if any slave was caught with tar on their body, which was very difficult to take out, then that slave would be whipped terribly by the chief gardener. So I think that's where Uncle Remus, the pseudonym, I guess, of the actual author for the Song of the South. I think that's the idea that he went off of, but it actually came from a real life thing. This is something that Frederick Douglass saw. So that all happened in just chapter 3. Just a lot of stuff. And what I learned in chapter 4 of the narrative life of an American slave, Frederick Douglass, was that well, I saw his injustices done. Now, at the time, remember, slaves. There was a maxim that even the young white kids knew, that Frederick Douglass said that they knew, because he knew it. I think they said it costs like half a cent or half a cent to murder a black person, and then another half to bury him. Those were the times that we don't want to recognize as Americans, but those were things that people said, and they probably say now, which is very disgraceful. One of the injustice that I'm talking about was killing of a slave. There were 3 deaths that Frederick talked about in chapter 4, and it's very, how can you treat human beings like this? What happened in the first one was that there was a slave that was being there was a slave that was being whipped, like a lot. And after that slave was whipped, like during the whipping, I guess he broke free, and he ran into a lake. So he ran into the lake, and this is, I think, Captain Lloyd's new taskmaster, Mr. Gore, I think they called him. And what Mr. Gore said, I'll give you three to the count of three. And he went one, two. This, the African American gentleman, he stayed in the water. And at the count of three, Mr. Gore took a gun and shot the gentleman in the face and killed him. Uh, you know, ghastly stuff. Another one that he talked about was that there was a young girl, 15, 16 years old. She had no sleep. Apparently, she had no sleep, and so what happened was that she was in charge of a baby in the room in the master's house, and not Captain Lloyd's house. Not that that matters, but um, because she didn't attend to the baby, the master of the house grabbed like this stick, or I think it was like a stick, and hit her in the face and broke her nose and her collarbone, and she died. And there was another one that he talked about where it was this old man, old slave, where he left his border. Like, I guess in Baltimore, there's a lot of oyster fishing. I don't know if you fish for oysters. I don't. I never really eaten oyster. What happened was he went out of his property and went onto another plantation owner's property and was killed. So by the other plantation owner, and that other plantation owner went to go justify himself in front of the other owner. So I read all of this, and I'm just thinking about Trayvon Martin. I'm thinking about all these young men who were murdered by police officers, by fake officers, like what's his name, George Zimmerman, that idiot, uh, dressing himself as something that he's not. And I just see it, and I just sympathize, because we love to, like, we love to be judgmental, and we love to look at all the aspects of the case of history. We love to do that, but we fail to look at why people feel the way they do. We're talking about a lifetimes of injustices, tons of injustices that were being done. Now you all of a sudden you expect me to relax? You expect me to be cool, to accept certain injustices? No, 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 no. That's not how it works. You know, like you got to look at the past. If you forget the past, you will have no future. These are some of my opinions. I'll just I can't wait to get into more and learn a lot more, because at this point, Frederick recently, I believe he's going to learn from his slave owner's wife. I think I'm at that point, so I'm really excited to see how he was able to learn, to read and write. So until then, thanks for watching, you guys. This has been my analysis of the narrative life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. And you can find all of this stuff right here on my YouTube channel, Outlet Podcast. All my audio content you can find on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and Blueberry. Sometimes I do stuff on Periscope. You can find me there at Outlet Podcast, as well as on Twitter at Outlet Podcast. Everybody, this has been my pleasure. Thank you very much for sticking around. God bless you guys. Connect and recharge.